All right. Welcome to episode 0 of the Sporty Show. I am your host, William Tyler. And with me today are two of my best buds, Bash Watson and Dawson Shifford. And today we are going to get into a little bit of talk about new leagues and some of the oldest sports around. Hopefully Dawson is going to help me out with some of this golf talk. I don't know a ton about golf, but I'm kind of getting into this new TGL Tomorrow Golf League, so we're going to talk a little bit of that. I don't think either one of you guys watch bull riding.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with Bash on this one.
All right, I may have to take the brunt of it on the bull riding talk, but then I know Bash got my back on the MMA talk. We'll get into some of that. That's the brunt of this conversation. I want to get into the Global Fight League. A new MMA league has popped up out of nowhere almost. There was some talk about this a couple of years ago, and then out of nowhere, here it is, ready to go with some big names signed. So we'll get to that, but I want to start first by talking about some of these old sports that have been around, and maybe no older sport around than bull riding. Anybody know when bull riding was invented? Like, that has to be something crazy, right? The date on that?
I would assume probably at least early 1900s, something.
I would be interested to know what the date is, because there's probably the first guy rode a bull in 1842 or something, but then the first guy rode it.
1600s.
Okay.
1600s. Wow. I was way off.
What? Was it an Indian? A
That's-
Native American? That is crazy.
That's okay. That,
1600s.
Let me double check that. That might not be. I might have.
That sounds right. Somebody
sounds
probably
right,
rode a
yeah.
bull then, but
someone's
I don't think they were counting how long he rode and scoring it at that point.
From
Yeah.
the American Cowboy website, we're looking at it.
I like that stat. So the PBR has been around for forever. They've been scoring bull rides for forever. But now they've taken it into this cool new team format. It's something that you're seeing pop up in a lot of places. I chose a couple to talk about today, but you're seeing this in a bunch of different sports. A lot of new leagues popping up. I got the chance to talk to one of the vice presidents over there at PBR. He was actually on campus over at Full Sail, and I kind of got a chance to pick his ear for a second. And he was just telling me all about why this model makes a lot of sense. He goes, everybody likes cheering for a team. We're taking bull riding, but we're creating these new models. There's 10 teams. Listen to these. You got the Arizona Ridge Riders, the Austin Gamblers, the Kansas City Outlaws, the Missouri Thunder, the New York Mavericks. Some cool ones in there. The Texas Rattlers. Now, the Austin Gamblers, Texas Rattlers, I'm a Houston, Texas guy, but already I'm drawn to those. I'm I don't even know who the Texas Rattlers are, but they better be riding some bulls over there on that team. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I kind of get what he's saying.
Yeah.
I kind of get that idea of okay, you just call it a team, you give them a logo, and start selling hats. I'm buying a hat. You know what I'm saying? I get the idea, and I think it's just latching on to what we're already doing. I'm already cheering for all the teams from Houston. If you make another team from Houston, it's easy enough for me to just kind of jump on the bandwagon. So let me break this down a little bit. So tell me if you just think this would work. Does this interest you any more in bull riding? So they take what's already going on. The athletes is probably the most interesting part to me. They're recruiting college athletes. So they're literally going to college programs and saying hey, you can make $100,000 as a pro bull rider. Maybe you're a defensive end in D2 football, or a wrestler, from somewhere that's not really got a future doing much in athletics or something like that, but you want to keep the thing going.
Yeah,
you still got that fire.
So how are they recruiting these players though?
Ken was actually on campus recording the videos that were going out to athletes to sort of explain that process. And it was super interesting. He's sending these, to college and athletes. And he was telling me too, BMXers and snowboarders, extreme sports guys, anybody that's willing to jump on a bull, big athletic dudes or crazy people basically.
Yeah.
But they're sending these things out saying hey, you can come in and they actually run them through a combine. They test your grip strength. They do some squats. They can send in some stats and stuff like that, and then they can actually get recruited. So they have these teams, all those teams that I was reading off. They have a draft and they pick guys, and the teams are made up of I think 8 guys total. 5 guys compete. It's 5-on-5. You compete in a game. So it's interesting. It's kind of interesting to me. The athletes is the most interesting part.
Right.
You get a high level football guy in there trying to ride a bull. I'm interested. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
4-star recruit out of Alabama. You know.
that's cool. Like
Especially them being like novices in bull riding. And
Right,
I
right.
feel like that adds to the sport, makes it a little more entertaining. You know?
yeah, we'll get into that. So let's
Yeah.
look at the next thing I got here is this Tomorrow's Golf League. The first thing I don't like about it is the name, and I'm cheating by calling it Tomorrow's Golf League. I had to like dig to find out what it was called.
Interesting.
It's nomenclature or whatever. They're using TGL everywhere.
I saw that when I tried to Google it.
Yeah, it's like kind of hard to find. I thought it was called the Golf League for the longest, and then I kind of dug around and realized it's Tomorrow's Golf League after Tomorrow Sports, which is Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, and I believe one other golfer whose name we wouldn't recognize as much.
Yeah.
But those two guys are involved. And Tomorrow Sports, like I've seen them, they're posting like sports reporter jobs and they're hiring and stuff like that. So I don't know exactly like what their company is doing, but part of it is this Tomorrow's Golf League. It's indoors here in Florida at the SoFi Center. To me, the setup is incredible. Let me go through some of the names here. They've kind of done the same thing. You got the Atlanta Drive GC Golf Club instead of like FC, like football club. Yeah. They're going GC on these. Boston Common Golf, great name. Great team name. I like that one. Jupiter Links Golf Club is the one down here in Florida. That's Tiger's team. He's on that one. The Bay GC is San Francisco. New York GC, Los Angeles GC. So some cool names, kind of just basic, but that kind of fits golf, I feel like. The thing with this one is they're kind of going the other way. They got the best athletes to compete in this thing. Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, Justin Rose, Ricky Fowler, Wyndham Clark, and more. So like I just grabbed the biggest guys, but like
yeah, for sure.
Everybody in golf that somebody is kind of like playing in this thing.
That's pretty cool. What's like? Do you know like the difference between the rules and stuff like that between this and like normal golf?
I think it'll be pretty basic as far as like keeping score. They're gonna play it as far as like a game though, so it's like I think you're competing 3-on-3, and you can play any hole in golf. They have this giant, like I think it's 55 by 60 foot screen that they're hitting on. And then if you hit it on the fairway, you're actually hitting off of a real fairway. If you hit it into the rough, you got to hit out of real rough. Hit it into a sand trap, you hit out of a real sand trap. And then you're chipping and putting live, like right there. It's in a stadium. You get to sit there and watch the whole hole from your seat. It sounds pretty cool.
It does sound cool.
On a screen?
You gotta
Is that what you're saying?
You hit it like a simulator. You hit your drive and maybe your next shot off of the real ground into a simulator.
Interesting.
And then once you get close enough to chip and putt, the green is right there live in the thing, and you chip and putt, and it changes. It's the same green and the same everything. In between holes, that thing moves around. It's like a man-made contraption, and it changes.
That's a crazy like idea for golf. Just
what a
half the
concept,
game
right?
And then taking it to where it'd be like more of a practice for some of these pros, right? When you go to a facility for something like that. But then also still having real elements of the game be like such a big part of it. I think another like cool thing that you talked about too. I really like the names you talked about, some of the team names. I think it's really cool, like kind of a callback to what we were talking about earlier. It's cool how like they both have like a style. The names for the TGL kind of align with a lot of like the professional like soccer clubs, a little more serious, a little more hard toned for something of that sort of stature, because it's always like the gentleman.
And then your PBR names were like XFL team names.
Yeah, they're like outlaws, right? But it's like a bull rider,
100%.
So it's
100%.
I really like that. I think it's
the
super
Gamblers, the Thunder, the Outlaws, the Freedom, the Ridge Riders, like
Which is crazy to me that they would call the Austin team the Gamblers. Like
where does
cool.
that
even come from?
Go with the Vegas, right?
All right,
Like that.
I wasn't crazy about that one, and then I don't like that they have Texas Rattlers. Like, what city in Texas is that in? I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of state teams in general when there's big states like that.
Yeah, when you have multiple cities.
Name a city. Where are you at?
I don't like the ones where it's like multiple teams in a city, like the New York teams, the LA teams.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah.
How do you even pick if you're from the area?
The New York Jets are in Jersey. Like
Yeah,
that
they
is,
should be New Jersey Jets, right?
The Dallas Cowboys are in Arlington.
Yeah,
We're
most
getting
Dallas
picky.
teams are on.
You know.
Lakers.
Yeah. So there's some weird ones there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I really want to take this into combat sports because that's where my heart lies. I know me and Bash are aligned on that. Now, you watched PGF World. We've talked about this.
Yep.
Dosh, you may be in the dark a little bit here, but this was a jiu-jitsu league that I believe this was, their second season?
Yeah, no, this is their 7th.
Oh, okay, so it's been a while. It's been going a while. This was the second or third that I'd kind of like been aware of and like watched and stuff. And it's a real similar deal where they're pairing off into teams. They're giving them a team name. They're giving them a logo. The only difference here is that it's super short. Like everything happens over the course of what is it, a week
yeah, I
or
believe
so?
it's like
I think.
week or weekend, something like that.
But yeah, between like getting drafted and actually like completing the tournament, I think it's all within like 7 to 10 days or something. But
That's short.
yeah, it's quick. And in this one, it's really not the best athletes necessarily. It's some of the top guys that are out there, but it's probably not the best of the best, I wouldn't say.
Yep, I agree.
But where they kind of pulled in the names was the coaches, which I thought was an interesting kind of way to go about it. So maybe we don't have like Gordon Ryan or some of the biggest names in jiu-jitsu that we can get, but if we've got some of the biggest names coaching it, that's another way to like, because at first Eddie Bravo was like coaching a team.
Yep.
I think Hoist was like talking about coaching a team, and so like having some of those like super legit jiu-jitsu guys involved was like, oh, okay, this is for real. Like they know jiu-jitsu. If they're in on it, I'll watch. I believe it.
Right, yeah, no, I agree. I also think it's cool, like the setup that they have for it. It's like a bunch of couches, people just chilling, watching the guys.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
love
cool.
it.
Like a movie theater type.
Yeah,
I
almost
love
yeah.
it.
And it's just like people just, and it's like very small and intimate, almost. You know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
it
really
is.
Cool. I enjoy it.
It looked like low-key professional.
Yeah, yeah.
Like people were like chilling on these leather couches. They were like nice, like white leather
Yep.
couches. And yeah,
Very
it was
high
like
class, but
it looked like as high class as you can get with jiu-jitsu. Everybody still was like covered in tattoos. There was like
Yeah, but,
hot chicks
you know.
everywhere.
Yeah,
You know, it wasn't like
Almost like
a little bit. Yeah, it was
little-
clubby.
Yeah. Yep.
And they did it in Vegas this year, so it was like Vegas ballroom class,
Oh yeah,
kind of,
it's
you
right
know.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting, and like I'm still on the fence, and I listened to Helwani talk about this a lot. We'll get into the Global Fight League. This is kind of what he was referencing, but like I'm not sure that like this whole team idea, moving it into like all right, we're going to do a regular season with points on the line, and then somebody qualifies for like a postseason. Like, I don't know how that model shapes into the fight world and into combat sports. Bash, I'm interested to see what you think.
See, I'm on the fence because I've seen him say that as well.
Yeah.
But
Helwani, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I just prefer, like, I don't know. I think it's cool because it's different. I think it's cool because you have teams you can root for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like most combat sports, that's just not the case.
Right.
Whereas you only root for a person, unless it's like a person from like a country that you're from, like a Dagestani, you know what I mean? Something
Sure.
of that nature.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you don't really have the whole team on the playoffs like you do in football and basketball. So I think it's cool in that sense. But
Yeah.
as far as do I think it could work though? I don't know. I think it's working so far.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like, I think people like TGL or PBR that are big names, there's a lot of money behind these things. So to me, and after like, I know it was just a 1 or 2 hour conversation with that guy from PBR, but to me, I'm like, okay, people wouldn't be putting money behind this, and like, you wouldn't see them popping up everywhere if this didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so let's go ahead and let's dive into this Global Fight League, and let's
Global
just
Fight League,
kind of
yep.
figure this out. So the idea behind this, I like the idea. To me, they're kind of going at it a couple different ways, but they're taking some tips from those other leagues that we were talking about. So as far as names, I think they did fantastic. Let me read off some of these names. Bash, you're going to recognize every single one of them. Dawson, you
Still in the dark.
you nod your head if you know any of these dudes. Marlon Marai. So fantastic featherweight, probably one of the best featherweight prospects that's not currently signed by the UFC, I would say. Now, that's, to me, Anthony Pettis. That's another really big one on there. Luke Rockhold, another fantastic signing. I think he's like super hot right now.
Oh yeah, he did CJI this year.
He did CJI this year. He's done a couple of karate combat fights as well as Anthony Pettis.
Yep.
But here, let me just run through this. So Frank Mir, Fabricio Verdum, JDS, and Greg Hardy all signed into the heavyweight division. Alexander Gustafsson signed in as a lightweight. Middleweights, Gegard Mousasi, Luke Rockhold, and Vanderlei Silva. Now, Vanderlei, like, that's interesting, but good gosh, how many fights does he have left?
That's what I want to get into. After you name off all the names, I want to get into like some of, you know, how
Should they be fighting?
exactly. These are older guys. They were early 2000s fighters.
Perfect guy to have that conversation surrounding around Tyron Woodley.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
he just got knocked out by Jake Paul.
Yeah, like, should he really be in
And
it?
he's in this league too.
Yeah.
This feels like the MLS almost, where it's kind of like a
You know,
old man's league.
I literally almost added MLS to this conversation
Yeah.
because I remember when the MLS popped up and it felt like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Big Three?
It felt like a new league. It felt like, oh, they're doing something new in soccer. You know what I mean? It was like the same rules, the same sort of setup and everything. The players aren't as good as the real soccer players, but like it was kind of a soccer league.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just a little different because they've got the tournament format at the end of the year instead of like, and there's
Right.
no relegation.
There's
system.
no relegation.
They still have all the players though. There's a lot of good like.
And they don't fall within the whole FIFA, like all the other things that are going on within the Euro leagues. There's a bunch of stuff that MLS
Yeah.
is not included in. You know
They're
what I
in
mean?
some of the Copa stuff. Like,
Yeah.
Well, but that's more like, I guess that's international though.
Right.
That's what's like. Yeah, a lot of those MLS teams like they don't really make it to the Champions League, and obviously, like we said, it's because they're a little bit older, a little bit washed.
And I was there, so I was in LA for I guess it would have been a Galaxy New York Red Bulls game. I was at the LA Galaxy game. They were playing the New York Red Bulls, and it was Thierry Henry's very first game in the MLS.
Henry, yes.
And I was like, I remember thinking like, okay, this isn't just a BS soccer league anymore. Like this is kind of a real Thierry Henry is playing in this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of like what this is. I'm like, Alexander Gustafsson's fighting in this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like, it's got to be sort of legit, right?
It's
Like,
legit, but it's like you're getting a bunch of older guys. You're not getting young guys in their
Right.
prime. You're not getting
Right.
Joseph Chin, and like just you're getting.
And one thing that the guy kept saying, I wish I should have wrote his name down. Maybe I can look it up here. But he was doing the interview on Helwani's show, and he kept talking about this is a proof of concept season. You know what I mean? Which I liked to hear and I didn't like to hear. I like to hear it because it makes me realize that they realize they've got some work to do, and this is probably like going to maybe show what could be, but maybe young fighters do sign into this before they get ready to go to the UFC eventually.
Yeah.
It's someday.
Yeah.
Maybe it does become sort of a feeder system or a builder system, or maybe if you get cut from your college wrestling team or something,
Come to this.
you know what I'm saying? You can go, I still got a lot of fire in my belly. I need to get out there and compete something.
Sure.
Maybe this is another place for you to go.
Like a
You know what I'm
G
saying?
League.
Yeah, exactly. This is, the minor leagues, the G League or whatever.
Right.
I don't think it's impossible for feeder systems to pop up in MMA. The bigger question to me though is that like, does it make it any more interesting that it's a regular season and there's points scored? So like when I'm watching, if Fabricio and Verdum and Frank Mir get to fight in this thing, I'm watching that, right? I don't know that while I'm watching, I'm hoping that he scores points for Los Angeles Fight Club and that I hope he gets the finish because Los Angeles Fight Club needs 3 more points to make the play. Like, I don't know if I get that buy-in
Right.
from me
Right.
as somebody who's already a fight fan and already sort of knows these guys a little bit. I don't know if I get that.
Yeah. Did you watch what is it, WNO? I believe they
Yeah,
they
who's
did,
number one?
I believe they did the team system as well, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
Similar to PGF World.
right, yep, similar, yep. And I think it works, honestly. I mean, I feel like it's working as far as the team system, you
Yeah.
get points and things of that nature. My only issue with this is just you're getting guys who are older and past their prime.
For sure.
So I feel like it's harder to get people involved or interested in a 50-year-old Verdum, like who really wants to.
I think that they do that now because he might know who Fabricio Verdum is
Yeah.
and tune in, where we know Fabricio Verdum is washed
Right.
and like might tune in to see how bad the concussion he's going to get
Yeah.
or whatever. But like,
How bad the beatdown is.
yeah, like how ugly is this going to get? But like if they just signed a bunch of guys that we didn't know, it's even harder to sell. You know what I'm saying?
agree.
And I think they're probably looking at like, how do we get a TV deal? How do we get numbers? How do we get viewerships on this? You sign freaking Anthony Pettis and Luke Rockhold.
Because that'll still hold viewership, right? Where like maybe if you did get those young guys like right away, and I think maybe that's the end term goal. You're talking about the workshop of it, just to get people like their foot in the door.
For
And be
sure.
like, hey, we got people here. Come watch the fights. I don't know. Like for me, I was thinking about it in a different way, where maybe you're more focused on the players than you are the team point settings, and I think you guys talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But as someone who's kind of like out of loop in that way, I don't know as far as much as like a team sense as what that would do for a viewer compared to like bull riding, where I feel like you don't really know anybody, where it's more like you
Right,
can
right.
reconcile with the team.
I think
compared
the
to
thing is
player.
like in all of these sports, like you got to be pretty deep in to know these guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The bull riders, I'm sure bull riding fans know those guys. I looked through the roster trying to recognize one name, and I call myself a super casual bull riding fan, but like I enjoy watching it. I didn't know a single dude on the PBR teams. Now I can flip through the real PBR roster and I know the top, 5, 10. I know some of the big guys in there, some of the guys that have been around a while or whatever. But these team guys, I hadn't known a lot of them or whatever. And a lot of them aren't American. A lot of them aren't from here. A lot of them are Brazilian and from elsewhere and stuff like that. And that's a lot of same thing with these fighters.
Yeah, see, my problem is as far as the Global Fight League, I just think that branding matters, right? So if you start your branding off as we hire, people past their primes, I just feel like you probably
gonna always look that way.
You're probably just going to continue to get more guys past their primes, and I don't know. I just can't see people wanting to watch that. You know what I mean? Especially when you got all these younger fighters. You got the PFL. You got all these other.
I've been dancing around the PFL in this whole conversation. It's hard not to have this conversation without bringing up the PFL because the PFL is sort of doing the same thing. They have a tournament
championship
thing going on. Yeah, the whole deal. Regular season playoffs, tournament. You can win $1 million at the end of the thing, which makes it worth your time or whatever if if you can win it. But I still they have fighters that aren't quite ready to be in the UFC, the majority of them, or have previously been successful in UFC or whatever at varying degrees. I still don't know that, like, if you're trying to sell card after card throughout the year, I don't know that tournament is the best way to do it. As a fight fan, the tournament's super fun because I get to see it lead up to this one championship, but that's really the only one I want to watch is like that end part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, kind of like a playoff season. You just
kind of
playoffs.
Yeah.
So you're not as interested in maybe like a regular season variant where you're getting to that point? Is what you're saying?
Not as much. One of the better things I liked from that conversation with Ariel Helwani about the GFL, they have about 300 fighters signed to go into the draft, but only about 180, I believe he said, are going to be drafted. So that means they've got a bunch of guys that we probably have never heard of. You know what I'm saying? Like there's probably a bunch of no names out there, a bunch of
name for themselves,
that are like
that.
If somebody's gonna, I'll throw my name in the draft. Maybe some guy watches 2 or 3 of my fights and goes, "This guy's a savage. I'll take him at my lightweight guy or whatever. He's young. He's ready to go." And then we hear about this guy through this thing. It becomes a thing of like, hey, you could pop on this deal. If people are watching, they got to get it out there. They need a TV deal or some broadcasting rights or these days, man, like they were talking about that a bunch on the Helwani show. I'm going, put it on YouTube. Like the more eyeballs, the better at this point. You know what I'm saying? I agree. And you see a lot of things going to that. How many comedy specials and stuff like that have you seen just getting thrown on YouTube just to get more and more exposure?
100%. Even like Bang Tao in Thailand.
Yeah.
See, they put all their videos on YouTube.
A lot of jiu-jitsu. A lot of jiu-jitsu is for free on YouTube.
Flow grappling, everything.
Yeah, flow grappling. And there's different avenues. And maybe this ends up on UFC Fight Pass isn't going to pick it up because it's a little bit probably too much of a competitor.
But then also,
maybe Flow. Maybe a Flow fight.
I feel like that's also a reason why UFC Fight Pass would pick it up, though, because it is a competitor.
Yeah.
UFC is almost a
Fight Pass. Fight Pass monopoly. Has some interesting things on there where I'm like, do they own this? Like it's kind of a competitor, but it'll pop up on there.
Right.
Where at this point I'm like, TKO is just going to buy this product. You know what I mean? Which I don't think the GFL would be completely upset about. I think that like if this thing got pretty big in like 3 to 5 years and Dana and TKO came in and they were like, hey, y'all built a feeder system that we really like. Can we give you $1 billion for it? They might be like, yep, that's exactly what we were hoping for.
I don't think there's a mic that
100%.
I feel like that's just, hey, give me the money. Big money.
Right?
But no, they do got some big names on this list. I'm excited to see what they do, but at the same time, I'm curious as to see if their age plays a huge role in it.
Yeah, the age is going to be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see if they could, like I said, emerge some new fighters, kind of create some new superstars of their own.
Yeah.
Because if you can do that, and then one of those guys gets good enough to go up against Luke Rockhold, in a title fight, or see, that's the thing. You don't have titles, I guess. You'd have.
I didn't even think about that. What is there?
So here's the weird thing. There's a team series, but eventually, like fighting is individual. So like, you've got to go to an individual thing at some point. Like you got to find the best heavyweight. At some point.
Fight your own teammate in this?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh,
that's crazy.
Well, see, here's the other thing is like we talked about branding and I mentioned like if you made something called the Houston Hitmen, if there was a Houston MMA team, a Houston pro MMA team, they were all trained by some coach, Crew Bob at Main Street Boxing, downtown Houston. They were all hanging out with Derek Lewis and training, fighting under that guy. It would be impossible for me not to pull for every single one of those guys. I would be
100%.
the biggest fan they've ever had. You know what I'm saying? Just because it's like you can't hit a hard ball more in my direction than like MMA in Houston right there. It's like, boom, I'm on board.
Yep.
But the thing with this is that like they're not forcing guys to train with specific people or in specific locations. So Anthony Pettis trains in Vegas. If he gets signed to the Cleveland whatevers, he's not moving to Cleveland to like go train or what, you know what I mean? To some coach. Like it's not like some guy gets to summon Frank Mir to his gym to like become a new athlete from, you know what I mean?
In a way, I feel like that would be better, right?
100%.
You look at B team, you look at fighters that's coming out of under John Dana here. Like what's the
Austin's become a hotbed for jiu-jitsu because
100%.
Those teams are local and people know about them.
Yep.
And people that would have never been involved in jiu-jitsu or never cheered for jiu-jitsu probably watched CJI this year and cheered for Craig Jones because they were like, oh, that's the guy that's doing jiu-jitsu from Austin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
And I think that you see that in MMA now. Like, I don't know, do you know of any MMA fighters that are from Detroit? Like, there's probably some guy.
I wish I did off the top of my head. I mean, yeah, like.
But like you're a Detroit guy, so like you don't have an affiliation to any gym or like any one fighter necessarily. But like if you're listening and they go fighting out of Detroit, Michigan, you're going, let's go.
I'll keep my ears peeled for that one.
You know what I mean? Like you're automatically pulling for that guy.
Right.
So I think that there's a way like that branding, that whole idea, like it makes sense, but they're sort of diluting it a little bit.
I agree. I feel like they should have the fighters fight out of the same gym. It's almost like the Ultimate Fighter. It's like you have all these fighters fighting out of the same gym under the same trainer in the same location, so it's easier to root for that team.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You could pull people from the location. So you talked about people not wanting to move. What if you just pulled the people that are already there and built teams that way?
That would be better.
That honestly would work. I've often thought like every gym should be required. Like this, I go way deep down the rabbit hole here, but like I've often thought, what if the UFC required gyms to like have a license, right? Like if you want to have a UFC fighter or a fighter in the UFC, you have to have a UFC license. Like we have to come and approve your gym. Like, yep, this is a good enough gym. It's legit, right? First, that's step one. Then you have to sign one fighter in every weight division. Right?
That would be cool.
You have to keep one fighter on your roster in every weight division at all times. They have to be active, ready to go, something. If somebody gets injured, you got to have a backup. You know what I mean? So it's like a real team.
They
you know
should
what
do
I'm saying?
that. That's actually a great idea. Yeah.
That's
a great idea.
Because then I start watching that. Like I start pulling for the guys that are from X gym. And they don't necessarily have to even be from my city. Like I don't know if that would work right away. Mm-hmm. But like there's enough big legit. You can get Jackson Wink. You can get some of these bigger MMA gyms from around the country. And then I think what really happens is that those gyms become closer and start to resemble things like the UFC Performance Center. Or what's it called?
Yeah.
The PI?
Yeah, yep.
Performance Institute. The UFC Performance Institute. State-of-the-art facility where athletes can go nutrition, recovery, training, the best coaches in the world, the best doctors in the world, the best facility. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's basically an NFL facility.
Right.
But for UFC fighters, for MMA fighters.
Go crazy.
You know what I mean? And once you're in the UFC, you can go there and train and take advantage of all of that. I think it's very possible where 6 of those exist around the country and there's 6 MMA teams. Maybe something like the Global Fight League could start
actually
that.
Really cool. That'd be a really cool league, I think. I would definitely
I've put way too much thought into it.
Yeah,
I probably put too much into this,
okay.
but I love beating up the ideas. I love seeing these little leagues pop up. And like I said, there's a bunch of them out there that I didn't even mention. And so it'll be fun to watch. I will be watching the Global Fight League, like it or not. I think that I will begrudgingly tune in, even if it's, a subscription that I've got to buy. You know what? Let's close on this. Let me get a guess from y'all on this one. One of the most interesting things about this Global Fight League is that I mentioned he tried to do this thing about 2 years ago. And he came on Helwani's show. And actually, it was about 4 years ago. He came on Helwani's show and he said, in 2 years, we'll be ready. And that 2 years was really like 2022. Mm-hmm. And obviously, that didn't happen. And so they kind of cracked on him for, hey, you said that you were going to bring this thing and it never really worked out. Well, now he's back in 2024, into 2024, and he's like, we're ready to go again. And so Helwani's like, well, you've said this before, bud. Like, what happened? And his answer was like, well, it really was a funding thing. I thought we were going to be able to get the funding, and we didn't get it. But now we have it. The obvious follow-up question was like, where'd you get the money? And he's like, well, my investor doesn't want me to give his name, but he's a tech billionaire. Any guesses? I have my guess.
I already know the one that you're.
We talked about it, didn't we?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Not only that, but who's a tech guy?
We know,
it?
Yeah,
exactly. Right.
Yeah. So there's one specific tech billionaire that's very into MMA, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. That was the guy that came to mind. I was thinking because at first I was like, okay, who's got a ton of money that's thrown around sports? And I thought Bezos. But then you're like, okay, who leans into fighting?
Bezos is trying to buy the Bears.
Yeah. He's been. I mean, we'll probably get to that later. When we get to. Well, another thing going on, but I mean, he was into like 4 different teams at one point. Like he's tried to buy 4 different teams. It's crazy.
Zuckerberg. Here's the thing: is like if they don't want him to use his name, that's a detriment. Because if it is him, like that's a selling point right there. Like if Facebook is behind this, if Meta is behind this thing, like it's probably not going to fail.
Probably stream it on Facebook too.
VR.
Well, see, that was what he said. So we were talking about broadcasting, and I kept saying like they got to find a home for this thing, and maybe YouTube. His answer every time was like, we're either going to find a deal or we have our own app. And Helwani was like, oh, okay, so you already developed the app, and he's like, there's an app that exists, like everyone's already familiar with it.
Probably Facebook.
And he's like, we can stream on this app, we could charge on this app, we could do it for free, we can do anything we want with this app. Yeah. He seemed like very obvious about that. So I was like, man, this seems like Facebook.
It would be cool, but I mean, because a lot of people said that when CJI was doing this whole thing, they was thinking it was the same person.
Yeah.
Just because he had how much, like $2 million to put that on. So
I think he $1 million in prize money and $1 million to like do it all. I think, and then but that ended up being like a guy from Abu Dhabi or something, right? The CGI investor.
I don't think it ever came out.
Okay,
who it was.
Still up in the air.
Yeah, but I mean, if he is putting money into these sports, I mean, I think that's amazing. You got the money to do it. You love the sport. I would,
I mean, if he's not putting money behind some league, please do. Mark Zuckerberg, if you're out there, if you're watching episode 0 of the Sporty Show, please put billions and billions of dollars into jiu-jitsu and MMA. Start your own league. Stream it on Facebook. I will watch every episode. 100%. All right, we'll close on that, I guess. Thank you so much, guys. That's been the Sporty Show, episode 0. Tune in next time whenever, who knows what we'll be talking about. Cut.